Holly, thank you very much for coming to see us. I wonder if you could just tell us your name and what you're currently doing.
Yep, my name is Holly Howard and I'm a student nurse and I also work in care.
Fantastic. So, taking you right back to the beginning, what was your favourite subject at school?
I really liked history. I don't know why. I think it's just a people thing. I enjoyed learning, the scandals and I don't know, I always liked history. There was always a lot of, it's just fun, isn't it? It's just fun learning about people.
History.
Did you?
History, yeah. I was a history geek.
Ah, yes.
So what was your first job out of school? Did you go on to further education or?
Yes, I did. So my first job out of school, well, I worked on a checkout. That was great. That gave me my first insight into the general public. But no, I went to University of Kent. I did sociology, which I loved, and then came back and I didn't really know what to do with it. So I went back to supermarket. I worked in Waitrose and I tried to work my way up. So I worked in customer services and I just liked people. I've always loved people, learning about them and asking lots of questions and being interested in them. So
it's almost like a perfect training ground. Working in retail is almost a little bit of a training ground for care. There could be people who are working in retail now who would actually make great people in care. They would be wonderful because they've already done that face to face.
Absolutely, yeah. If you are in retail and you're doing that sort of, it is customer care. You're looking after somebody. You're trying to fulfil their needs, and they want something. And when you go into care, it does transfer really well because you all you're trying to do in care is have meaningful interactions with people and make their day a little bit better. And it's often really small things that can help, like remembering that they might not be able to turn the remote themselves. They come back at 4 because they want to go from BBC to ITV. Just remember to do that, and the thanks you get, you'd think you'd saved their lives, but you haven't. You've just done something that's special for them.
And that's why care work can be so rewarding.
Yeah, care is rewarding. I think I fell in love with it on my first day.
So how did you get into care?
So I got into care. I was made redundant right at the start of the pandemic. I worked in marketing and it was for events. So we were kind of hit first. And I sadly got made redundant. But my mum actually said to me, she was like, why don't you get a care job? They're desperate for carers. You've always said you wanted to help people, actually, why don't you just do it? So I got made redundant on the Friday, and by Sunday, I had a job in care. It was that quick.
That's incredibly quick, isn't it?
It was so fast. It just happened instantly. And started doing shadow shifts, got my manual handling training, got through all that, got my DBS. It was all done within a week. And got out there. And I remember going to somebody he was very challenging. He had, I'm trying to remember what he had now. It's similar to dementia, and you could tell as a young man I loved listening to his stories. He travelled the world. He was a soldier. You could tell he was like a womanizer. He had all these pictures of him in cars and just sat there drinking cups of tea with all these nurses around him. And
he'd had a full life.
Oh, he had stories for days, and I used to love listening to him. And I got that from him really quickly, but it was interesting seeing other carers with him who couldn't get on his wavelength. He was difficult at times and demanding. And sometimes it would be a struggle to calm him down because he's lost that sort of inhibition within himself to hold back. But you learn what works for him, and you learn sometimes an apology goes a long way. And just get to know him. It doesn't take long. People generally do want to talk about themselves. So ask the questions.
Tell me about that first week. You were pretty trained up by the end of that first week. Or you'd started at least?
I'd started. I think trained up is the wrong word because I'm 3 years in, and I'm not.
Well, the training never stops.
It never stops. You're always learning, and there's always something, some new machine, some new disease, some new condition that you're learning about. So I never stop. But yeah, that first week was okay. We trust you on your own now. Off you go.
And what were your duties in that once you'd sort of settled in?
Yes. Okay, so I was in domiciliary care, so house to house, and the sort of responsibilities that I had were go in, make sure they've medicated. That's, if you don't do anything, that's the one thing that you do. Make sure they've eaten, drunk, they're comfortable, they're where they're supposed to be, and the house isn't on fire. So it's all really simple stuff. You normally go there for half an hour and just, make sure they're happy.
What's that like going into people's homes? Because that's their castle, isn't it?
Yeah, going in, you're never ever sure what you're going to get. But that's the case whether you've known them for a year or longer. You can go into someone who is normally pretty independent, walks around with their little frame, makes their own cups of teas. They're just there for, especially during the pandemic, they're lonely. So they're there to...
It's companionship as well, isn't it? It's just somebody to talk to.
Absolutely. They might not be seeing their families or friends, or, they might not have an animal around anymore, or all that sort of stuff. So, you go in there for that, but you walk through the door and they could have had a fall. They could have had deterioration. It's weird. The really strange thing about domiciliary is that there's no... In a care home, you can feel a bit of a vibe. So if somebody's kicking off, the whole house will feel a little
that
bit...
feeling, yeah.
Yeah, so the atmosphere spreads, whereas house to house... I've been to somewhere before where, sadly, they passed away. It wasn't unexpected. It just wasn't supposed to happen while we were there.
Yeah.
So we've come away and they're obviously heartbroken, and we've had to come out that house, and we're holding on to that because you can't help it. You think of your own family, don't you?
Of course
think of your own friends, and so we had to come away from that. But the next house we went into was their birthday, and they had all their family there and balloons everywhere, and everyone was happy, and they didn't really need much help because the family mucked in because they wanted to get them up early, and we're there literally to have a chat and a bit of birthday cake, and you have to just forget the last house you were in. You just can't bring that with you.
No.
It's it's a really strange... You have to be really good at compartmentalising, I think.
I love that word. That's one of my favourite words. Each job has a little box, and you keep it in the box, and then when you move on to the next one, you close that box, you open the next one.
Exactly, yes.
In your head, at least.
Yes. So you compartmentalise, you take what you were feeling in that house, hide it in a box, and like you said, open the next door, open the next box, and absorb that. And you just have to keep on exchanging energy all the time.
And what skills do you think people need? Because there's recruitment issues in care across the board, and one of the reasons that we're doing this is to encourage people to think about care again.
Yes.
Because they may have preconceptions, misconceptions about what care is like.
Yes. That's a really good question. So the skills that you need to do care, I'd say you need to be patient. That's a really big one. You have to... Sometimes there's a time where you can speed people up, but patience, people aren't mobilising as well. You do have to sit and take a beat and let them take their time. You have to love people, I think. And you have to be very comfortable with being physical and, very okay with that. I think being observant is important. Looking around the house, looking at the person and taking it in. Because that could be the first telltale sign that something's going wrong. They might be breathing a little bit heavier, and if you notice that, you think, okay, let's take a seat, let's see if there's something underlying here, or if they've just been running around the house. Like they've forgotten that they can't run anymore, and that's what they've tried to do. So yeah, I think being observant is important as well.
Going into people's homes, you must experience some interesting times. Any times that come to mind that make you laugh or make you think, I can't believe that?
There are some, yeah, there are a few. I think my favourite one, this happened when I very first started. I went into a house and the lady was very needed a lot of help. And so I sort of went in all shy and nervous and I was like, hello, it's the carer, it's Holly here. And I could just hear like, hello, this. And I was like, hello, it's the carer. And this went on for a long time, just hello, hello, hello. So I started like walking around the house like, hello, I'm down here. And I thought, I'll go in the garden because the husband might be in the garden. Went out there, the husband was nowhere to be seen, but it was louder. I could hear this, hello, hello. And I was like, hello, it's the carer. Walked out and this bird turned its head and just went, hello. I just couldn't believe I'd spent 10 minutes and the husband, wife weren't there. I just walked into this house and had been talking to a bird for 10 minutes. And I just got in the car and I was just so embarrassed. I thought, yeah, this is ridiculous. I got in the car. I think I rang my housemate. It was like, this just happened to me. This wouldn't happen in any other job. This just is bizarre. It was a weird one.
We've heard some stories, but that's a pretty good one. That's pretty good. So how long did you stay in the domiciliary side of things?
I did domiciliary for about 2.5 years. I recently left just because of my commitments with student nursing, but I have now taken a job in a care home. So different hours, different way of working. So
you're training as a nurse at the moment, but you're also doing some work in the care home at the moment. Yes. And what's your role in the care home?
I'm a carer there.
So if there's such a thing as a normal day, and quite often in care there's not, but what would a normal day look like for you? How many hours and what do you do when you get in?
Yes. Okay, that's an interesting question because there isn't a normal day in care.
No.
You don't get normal days. But I suppose...
I suppose a day where you get to do the things you're expecting to do.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
So a normal day in care, you'd turn up. I get to work at about 8, a little bit earlier. It's usually a 12-hour day, but that's my choice. You don't have to do that. You can do earlies or lates. I just like long days.
And it's worth saying that care work is great for that because you can work it around a busy life. If you have a family, you can find ways.
Yeah.
It's one of the jobs where you can find ways to work your life around.
Absolutely. Yes, totally. And a lot of people do, even I've got restrictions. Normally the days are set, so you do 8 till 2, 2 till 8, or 8 till 8 is a long day, 8 till 8 overnight is nights. And I have spoken to them and they've been really kind about it. I don't finish university. When I'm not on placement, I finish at 3. So I can't get there for 2. So I said, if you give me till 4, I can do 4 till 10. And actually that's really helpful because those 8 till 10, I know what's going on in the home. I don't have to hand over. I can actually engage with the workers, the other carers, and we can get people to bed and do the busy work really quickly because they've got an extra pair of hands. And then by the time 10 o'clock comes and it's calmer, everyone's asleep, everyone's where they should be, hopefully, I can go home. I've done my hours. They've gotten an extra pair of hands. And that 2 till 4, where I should have been there, everyone's eating their lunch and they're calm and it's not busy.
So it actually helps the home.
Yeah, that's it. And there's always room for compromise. If there's a day that you've got to babysit your kids or your grandkids, or there's a day where something's happening, there's always a workaround. And it's a caring industry. Usually the people within it do care.
My sister is an activities coordinator in a home, and she said, it's the best job she's ever done.
Yeah.
And and B, she said it's it's a privilege,
Yeah.
and she has her favourites, and I suppose you don't let
Yeah.
that affect the work. But I
No.
think it's fine because you can't help but think that reminds me of my dad. He reminds me of my
Yeah.
dad, or she reminds me of my mum. And of course, you do form relationships with
Yeah.
these people, which is tricky in itself because they're not going
Yeah.
to be around forever and ever.
Yeah.
That you must. How do you deal with that?
Yes. So, like you said, that you're looking after people that are quite ill and elderly most of the time. So their life expectancy, they're probably entering that last 12 months of life. Sometimes you get longer, sometimes it's just a mobility issue. But yeah, people die in this job. And you can't pussyfoot around that. I think the best way to deal with that is being quite direct, talking about death, using those words is really important.
Because we're not very good at talking about death.
No, we're not. And saying the word dead and death and dying it feels gothic, doesn't it? It feels morbid.
It does, and some homes don't want them to talk about it.
Yeah. A lot of, especially new young carers, when they say, I'm not going to be around for very long, you go, oh, stop it, don't talk like that. But it is the truth, and naturally we talk about a good death and making sure that it's an important event. It's going to happen to everyone. The same with birth. Death will come. It's going to happen. And you want to talk about what do they actually want when they do go? What's important to them? Do they want the windows open, curtains open? Do they want light in the room? Do they want silence? Do they want music? Do they want to feel like they're in a little cave and comfortable, like it's night time? Do they want to be touched? Is that going to, touching their hand, is that going to annoy them? You really have to embrace those conversations because they only die once, and you don't want the family or the other carers to think that was awful, that was really, really sad. You want them to go, yeah, they look so peaceful, they seem so comfortable, we had a last conversation, I'll always remember it.
Moving on to the future.
Yep.
What will you do when you finish your training?
I have no idea what I'm going to do when I finish my training.
Because you could end up back in care if that's what you wanted, working in care.
Yeah. I would love to go back to care one day. I love care. If it paid more, that's one thing about care. That's the only thing that would put me off. But I would love to go back. I would love to try and give a fair wage to whoever. Like, I'd want to set up my own business. That's what I'd really want to do.
You'd like to run your own care home?
I'd love to run domiciliary care. I'd love to run a house-to-house company because that was my favourite. I do prefer house-to-house, I think. So, yeah.
I mean, we hope that things are beginning to change, and there's that sense that the disparity between perhaps the NHS and social care staff will begin to level up, and because I really think they should be considered the same.
So healthcare and social care assisters, they are so. There are so many people that if they just got care, wouldn't go to hospital. And I was saying this earlier today. I was talking about pyjama paralysis. It's a real thing. People, when they get to hospital, they decondition. So we don't know that person as well as a carer would. So we don't know if they can shave themselves or if they can get themselves changed or what their assistance level is. Do they need 2 people, 1? Can they walk with a frame? We don't know. And because we're risk averse, we will always take a step up and come back down. And if there's better care packages in place in the first place, and they're going there every day and they know the person and they can say, no, you're being lazy, come on, you can do this, and encourage them, they wouldn't have to be in hospital at all. It'd take the stress completely, like having one person in a bed that one extra person can just increase it, the levels in that ward so much, and they might not need to be there. They might have just needed a GP or a district nurse intervention first. So yeah, they should be considered as sisters, and they should be treated, you know, if we're going to give this to them, we need to give resource to these guys too, because they're in it together. So yeah.
Finally, if somebody came up to you and said, look, I'm looking for a job. I know you work in care. Why should I do it?
Care's the right job. It's these people in retail who might be looking for something new, something more meaningful, or working in an office who are sick of sitting in a chair and looking at a screen all day. Like, the variety, the job satisfaction I get, I always go home and think, I smile, I've done such a good thing. And if I had a couple of weeks where I wasn't doing care because I was off placement, I was waiting for my new job, and honestly my mood changed. Helping people makes you feel so good. I'd always recommend it to anybody. Give it a go.
Holly, thank you very much. Good luck with your studies and your next
Thank you.
move, and maybe we'll be interviewing you in a few years about your new care home.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.